The heavy iron bolt slides home, locking the carriage from the outside. Istanbul, 1640. The air inside creates a suffocating seal of stale rosewater and panic. For the Ottoman princesses, this journey is not a wedding procession, but a funeral for the living. Records imply their fate was often worse than death, minted as human currency to bribe viziers who feared their royal blood. Through the gilded lattice of the window, the Bosphorus is just a sliver of gray water. This screen is the motif, a barrier that turns a person into a ghost. You are 3 years old, or maybe 13. It does not matter. The transaction is complete. Why did the dynasty systematically crush the will of its own daughters to secure the throne? And what irreversible cost was hidden in the marriage contract signed with freezing wax? The cage does not open until the bird is dead. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The procession halts at the gates of the Pasha's palace, but the celebration stops at the threshold. The drums fall silent. Inside, the walls are cold stone, draped in heavy velvet to muffle the sound of the city. Here, the transition from imperial daughter to political hostage begins. The chief black eunuch hands over the ledger, a literal inventory of the princess's dowry, detailing every emerald, every bolt of silk, and every slave. She is signed for like a shipment of weaponry. In the bridal chamber, the dynamic is grotesque theater. The husband, often a grand vizier in his 50s or 60s, stands with his head bowed. He waits for permission to speak. He must kiss the hem of her robe. This looks like power, but it is a hollow ritual. The Sultan has granted her the authority to divorce him at will, a mercy written into the marriage contract. But the hidden price is absolute isolation. If she divorces him, she returns to the old palace, the Eski Saray, a place known as the House of Tears, where forgotten women wait to die. To leave this room is to vanish from the map. Freedom is a door that opens only onto a cliff. The change comes swiftly with the sunrise. The morning after the wedding, the princess's name is struck from the top copy rolls and entered into the Pasha's household accounts. Her allowance, the pashmakluk, or slipper money, is now monitored by the state treasury. She is no longer a child. She is a surveillance asset placed in the home of the Sultan's potential rival. She watches the vizier for signs of treason. If she fails to report him, she falls with him. Yet, a quiet will to resist surfaces in the archives. Letters from the 17th century show princesses refusing to consummate these marriages, demanding their husbands sleep on the floor. They use their high status as a shield, turning their private chambers into a fortress where the Pasha cannot enter. They do not weep, they organize. They maintain a rigid, terrifying etiquette that keeps the husband at a distance, ensuring no emotional bond can form that might be used against them. The chain is forged not of iron, but of duty. The condition of her existence is laid bare in the dead of night. A knock comes at the palace gate, not a guest, but the Bostan Shabasha, the head executioner. The Sultan has decided the vizier has grown too wealthy, too powerful. The marriage was never a union, it was a tether to keep the man close until harvest. Now, the state requires its due. The princess is given a choice: step aside and let the silken cord do its work, or attempt to intervene and be exiled to the weeping halls of the Eski Saray forever. She does not scream. She stands in the corridor, the draft from the garden chilling her bare feet on the marble. The executioners wait for her signal. She looks at the man she has lived with for 2 years. He pleads with his eyes. She delivers the refusal, cold and sharp as a shard of glass. My loyalty belongs to the blood of Osman. She steps back into the shadows. The door closes. The sound of a struggle is brief. Silence is the loudest sound in the empire. By morning, the palace is silent. The vizier's wealth is confiscated, returned to the treasury. The princess is a widow at 17, but the cruelty of the system is not in the killing, it is in the recycling. The mourning period, the idet, is barely observed before the brokers arrive. A new contract is drafted. A new vizier is chosen. She is washed, perfumed, and packaged again. The cycle resets. Records suggest princesses like Fatma Sultan were married and widowed nearly a dozen times. The irreversible cost is revealed. They are not people, but recurring revenue streams. The why is brutal economics. By marrying a princess to a wealthy statesman, the Sultan ensures that upon the husband's death, his fortune reverts to the wife, and thus back to the dynasty. The princess is a mechanism for money laundering. The groom kisses the hand that signed his death warrant. She stops fighting the role. Instead, she weaponizes the curse. The fear in the eyes of her new husbands becomes her armor. They know that to marry her is to invite the executioner into their bed. She demands lavish gifts, bankrupting them before the Sultan can. She forces them to divorce their other wives, isolating them completely. In the dim light of the bridal chamber for the fourth time, a hesitation occurs. Her hand halts over the clasp of her necklace. A single breath is held, counting the seconds of a life that is not hers. Then the fingers move. The clasp undoes. The necklace falls to the table with the heavy thud of a judge's gavel. She has ceased to be a victim. She has become the reckoning. Survival demands you become the monster they fear. Decades later, the truth is found not in the execution logs, but in the deeds of stone and mortar scattered across Istanbul. Navigate to the dusty silence of the Waqf, charitable foundation, archives. Here, the paper trail contradicts the tragedy. We find a document dated 1665, smelling of old leather and iron gall ink. It lists the assets of a suffering princess, 3 mosques, a hospital, huge tracts of land in Egypt, and the tax revenues of entire provinces. The gilded lattice returns, but the perspective shifts. Standing inside the Yeni Kami, or the complex of Mihrimah Sultan, we realize the screen was not just a cage, it was a blind. While the Viziers, the powerful men, were strangled in the night and their names scraped from history, the princesses remained. They were not the currency. They were the bankers. In the dim light of a private chapel, an elderly princess performs a wordless rite. She does not weep for the 7 husbands she has outlived. She organizes their liquidation. With a steady hand, she pours water from a silver ewer, not for ablution, but to mix the ink for a new endowment. The sound of the scratching quill is the only noise in the room. She transfers the confiscated wealth of her executed spouses into charitable foundations that bear her name, protecting the money from the Sultan's treasury forever. The ink lasts longer than the blood. Archaeological surveys of the period reveal a staggering discrepancy. The most enduring monuments of the era were commissioned by women who were technically prisoners. The irreversible cost of Act 1, the loss of identity, was a lie. They shed their husbands' names like snakeskin, retaining their imperial titles, their lineage, and the accumulated plunder of the empire. The Viziers were temporary fixtures, disposable fuses used to gather wealth. The princesses were the permanent institutions who harvested the explosion. She presses her personal seal into the hot red wax. The impression hardens instantly. It is a closing of the account. She has outlasted the politicians, the generals, and even the sultans who sold her. The city outside does not belong to the men who rule it for a season. It belongs to the women who own the very ground they walk on. History remembers the king, but the city belongs to the ghost. Walk through the cemetery garden behind the mosque today. The turbaned headstones of the Viziers lean at odd angles, sinking into the soft earth, their inscriptions worn smooth by centuries of Bosphorus wind. Some are headless, the stone decapitated just as the man was, a permanent mark of the Sultan's displeasure. But the princess's turban stands pristine, a hexagonal cage of marble and Iznik tile that offers no view inside. The ledgers in the Topkapi archives stop abruptly. The entries for household expenses simply cease. There is no final diary entry, no confession found under a floorboard, just a line of red ink drawn across the page, signaling the account is closed. The women who managed the empire's shadow economy did not leave memoirs. They left silence. Foreign ambassadors wrote home, whispering of sorrows hidden behind the veil, but they saw only the surface. They did not see the mechanism. The carriage from Act 1 continues to roll through history, but looking through the gilded lattice now, we see no face. The seat is empty. The girl who entered the carriage died the moment the door locked in 1640. What emerged was an institution in human shape, cold and durable as the stone she paid for. The rosewater scent has faded, replaced by the smell of wet dust. The irreversible cost was not the loss of life, but the total calcification of the heart. The gold remains. The name remains on the building. The woman is gone, erased by the very power she wielded to survive. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. The grave you visit is not a resting place. It is a vault for the secrets that paid for the walls.